A reoccurring segment we're going to have is we're going to play you some David Braben from the past, an interview, whatever, and you're going to hear from the man himself, what he thought, some words of where he wanted to shape Elite to go. And then we'll have a little discussion on, where it is going and how we see those things match up and what we think might be things that can happen in the future from that. So I hope you enjoy this.
So we've got a really good time coming up now with loads of new people coming to join us because of the PlayStation 4 and also hopefully on other platforms too. With the launch of Elite Dangerous with 2.3. It's in beta now. We're all very, very excited about it. And so it's been a great year. In fact, it's been a great several years for us, the lead up to this. And to give those new players some background of what is, what is Elite Dangerous about? And this whole feeling that you've got the real galaxy out there. So Elite Dangerous has the whole of our real galaxy, which is just stupidly big. I'm not going to start, reeling out the comparisons, but 400 billion star systems is the real galaxy you see in the night sky. Every single star you see in the night sky with the eye we'll see, and a whole load from telescopes as well, some 160,000 of them. We're set in the year 3303 now. It's moving forward in real time. And seeing how things have changed. So we've got a future where we've made it as scientifically accurate as we can, with the one exception, we've got faster than light travel, but you never know, that may come. But the great thing is thinking how that would happen. So imagine the Earth in the 24th, 25th centuries, where suddenly you've got faster than light space travel and it starts to become cheap. So you get large groups of people getting together. And I draw parallels with the wagon trains in the settlement of North America that would just head off into the unknown. And some of them might just disappear. Some will make it and settle cities, or in our case, settle planets. And it's that whole sort of slightly cowboy free-for-all that is the basis of the world we've created. Now, one of these great wagon trains set out and ended up forming what later became an empire. But they went as far as they possibly could, over 100 light years, which is a stupendous distance. But when you start comparing it with the galaxy, it's actually right next door. But anyway, they did this, and then new technologies developed, and they diverged a bit from the people who remained based on Earth, and grew, and then sort of entered this state of Cold War, where the two spheres are sort of met and now congealed into the whole of sort of human space. But they came up with very different ideas. In the same way, a lot of the founders of of modern day United States wanted to change the way things were done. They wanted to change things were done. So it started off with a system that was quite Roman based. Looking at the sort of the empires of the past and the sort of things they did, where you've got slavery, but it's very controlled slavery. It's very, very different. And seeing how the frictions between those worlds start up. And then we got a third superpower, started much later, called the Alliance, which is from people who didn't really like either of the two superpowers. The Federation, which is we can sort of recognise it from sort of present day America, I think, and other places, but is sort of what you would expect in terms of growing it, but very, very capitalist, all of this sort of thing. Whereas interestingly, the Empire has different laws to look after slaves, so you just get different mindsets. Where I think the Alliance is all a bit happy-go-lucky, a bit like modern-day Europe, and probably always falling out with each other. Not that we do that, of course. So that's a bit of the sort of the background. And then that story has moved forward. We've had lots of player groups coming up, disrupting systems, overthrowing governments. So it's always in a great state of flux, and you'll be joining in with that. But also sort of in parallel to that, we've had some great discoveries. Lots of players have seen themselves as explorers, because although human space is huge, probably 100,000 star systems or whatever, that is a tiny, tiny drip in this immense galaxy. And so what a lot of players have done is just headed out into the unknown. One group of players has founded a new centre of humanity called Colonia, which is all very exciting, and amazed the number of players who've done that. A lot of people who've visited the centre of the galaxy and even headed right across the galaxy. There's a new system now called Beagle Point, right the other side of the galaxy, and it's actually such an investment of time to go there. It's pretty amazing. But that's some of the background of it. And as part of this exploration, also people have come across an old alien race, which has since been called the Guardians. So people have been finding out things about that. But these are relics. This is a race that existed quite a while ago. But also other people have discovered unknown things, unknown artifacts, unknown probes, these strange probes that make funny noises when you approach them, and people have discovered all sorts of things with that, and the question is, what is their origin? Now, just sort of pausing that, what's interesting with the Guardians, that's sort of 1 to 2 million years ago, they went extinct, and people are still discovering the exact reasons why that happened. But if you look at sort of galactic time and the billions of years the galaxy's been around, then you look at humanity and life on Earth, and how, as a percentage of that time, it's taken hundreds of millions of years to evolve life, and then a small number of million years to evolve intelligent life, sentient life. But only a tiny amount of that time has been spent where we're not really even a spacefaring race yet in the 21st century. And so even by the 34th century, we're still, it's a tiny slice of time. And you imagine different populations spotting up like that, and you wonder how long we will last, which is slightly depressing. But we might go beyond wanting to communicate. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is the chances of two races actually being at a point where they can interact whilst both are still alive is actually small. And this is the basis for our story, of course, because the beauty and interesting thing with things like the unknown artifacts, unknown probes that have been discovered already, and other things that people might have seen, or have they seen, in Elite Dangerous already, is it creates wonderful speculation. But it's that great feeling of discovery. There are a lot of interesting things in the history of the game. There is an alien race called the Thargoids, which are, of course, mysterious, very, very dangerous, that have been there in previous games, even been interacted with and then suddenly disappeared. And so there are lots of interesting mysteries. There are some reports within Elite Dangerous of people having seen amazing looking spaceships in hyperspace. It's something that's been named hyperdiction. But, are these real? Who knows? Very, very exciting. And so one sort of group of characters we have in the game we call the Engineers. And these are an oddball group of people who have, for whatever reason, sort of broken away from the mainstream and are doing their own thing. A lot of them are sort of a fair way out of the outside, towards the edges of the human bubble or whatever, doing different specialities, and you bring them things, and they will do things like tuning up your weapons or your shields or whatever. And one of these guys is a guy called Professor Palin, who had actually headed right out in the Pleiades, where all the sort of alien contacts been going on, and he seems to be doing a lot with alien materials and things that some people might think are slightly questionable, but is researching into these things and has discovered a lot of things that have been able to help humanity. Now, one of the things is these unknown artifacts. If you carry them in your ship, you find it creates terrible corrosion. And it turns out to be some sort of biological process, maybe not unlike what the barnacles do, where it's taking the metals out of the structure of your ship, which of course isn't a good thing, because you like the structure of your ship to stay a strong structure. So what he's found is that these unknown artifacts won't go through certain materials. And, that these materials actually come from the barnacles. So there are all sorts of things that are sort of coming together. And he's himself got some strange history where he's disappeared and then reappeared and is now working with the Federation. So there's also a lot of interesting rumours as why that's happening, and why are the Empire and Federation, why are they at loggerheads over the Pleiades? Both seeming to be getting ready for war, building large numbers of ships. and there's already been the odd tussle between the two. So how that pans out is interesting, and how that's going to interact with the incoming aliens. And there's been a lot of mysterious goings on, which who knows whether they're important or not. What we're starting to see now is an amazing sort of overarching story in the game, as we start to see more interaction with the galaxy that's outside human space, which I think is really really exciting, really rich. And with these unanswered questions comes all sorts of reasons to explore, and reasons to interact with the game. And of course, there is the day-to-day. The beauty with, for me anyway, with the world of Elite Dangerous is the richness that you can interact at so many different levels. You can trade things back and forth. You can trade things that are illegal. You can get together in groups. All of these sort of things. But also looking at how people interact with the superpowers, how they support particular powers and things like that. One of the things, of course, I mentioned at the start, the superpowers and their interactions. Now, for some reason, the superpowers are going very, very big into the Pleiades, which is a star cluster you can see in the night sky. And this is where it's claimed these mysterious sightings have come from. But what's also very interesting is explorers have found these strange growths on the surface that have been named barnacles, because that's a little bit what they look like. And they are clearly some sort of alien life, in the sense that they're an organism. They can live with zero pressure. So these are on worlds with no atmosphere, and they burrow deep into, so that they're a bit like a plant that burrows deep into the ground, and then its roots pull all sorts of things up out of the earth using biological processes and form them into these little pods. Now that is an incredibly useful thing. Now there are all sorts of questions around. Were they genetically engineered? If so, who by? Were they genetically engineered many, many billions of years ago and have since evolved? So all sorts of fascinating questions, but then why are these concentrated just in certain areas? So more and more of this is why it's very interesting, as you'll start to see, we hope, some of these threads starting to come together. And actually what I'm expecting is more and more answers will beget more and more questions. People have asked with the story, how close to the edge are we? And I think that's fascinating and interesting. I think we're standing on the precipice. We may stay on that precipice for a while, but in this, it all depends on how it pans out. But yes, it has the scope for turning very nasty. In the previous games, the Thargoids have been very powerful aliens that we've come up against. We don't know whether these sightings we've seen are real, whether they're manufactured, but also we don't know how peaceful they are. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But I think there have been some possible leaks of what's of things that might have happened, or have they happened? Was that fakery as well? So who knows? And we're obviously there's a great team at Frontier who put a lot of effort into this, but also from the story point of view, it's the wonderful what we've got is probably the first story where you've actually got millions of people interacting in the same story. We aren't here, and obviously games where you rescue princesses are great, but we're not rescuing 1 million princesses. That would just be silly, because the value of princesses then goes somewhat down. But what we are doing is all cooperating or competing in the same environment, in the same story. And I love the way that's feeding together. All the different platforms of the game are on the same servers, working together to the same end goal. And I think that's really exciting, and something that, as we see the story really starting to take off, it's very exciting. And the game, the 2.3, is also starting to reveal, we're going to show you a trailer. You may already have seen it when you're watching this video, of some of the things that are coming soon to the game. But I think the most important thing is how the story unfolds and how players react to it, because the whole point here is what players do will determine what happens in the future. And I'm very intrigued and excited to see what you all do. So that's it from me. So enjoy PAX. And hopefully come and enjoy the game. We're having a great time. I'm Commander Braben. I've been killed by an awful lot of people already. I expect to carry on that way. So maybe see you in the game. Thank you.
Right on. So that was the man himself talking about sort of the whole situation with regard to the development of the game, and more specifically the Guardian and Thargoid issue. I mean, he touched early on in the game in sort of the breakdown of how the different groups have evolved, and obviously that is very much in play with regard to the Marlinist, and because he talked about the Empire breaking off from the Federation and whatnot. And, you know, I think we all sort of see what's going on there, and it's interesting dynamic-wise, but I think the most important thing from that talk to me was looking at the idea of the Thargoids and the Guardian story and the progression of it. Now, keep in mind, that interview was 4 years old, and we've progressed a little since then. At that point, they were still kind of going, what are these hyperdictions? What are these weird whatever? We now clearly know those are Thargoids. The Guardian story has progressed somewhat through the Ramtom mission series, where we got a little more insight into what happened to the Guardians and how their society progressed. But for 4 years ago, there hasn't been a huge sort of progression in that story. Now let's set that aside for just a moment and look at the whole concept of it's rare that you're going to have other alien species in the galaxy. But I'm gonna bang on my drum. I've been saying it for forever, and I will continue to say it. I want more aliens in this game, more species in this game. I would very much love an alien species that we contact where we do not immediately go to war. We don't just shoot them. I would like peaceful interactions with aliens. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean friendly. Some of those could be peaceful interactions where we are cooperating with them, we're helping them, we're whatever. Some of them could be peaceful, competitive interactions. Think the Ferengis from Star Trek, where we're peaceful, we're not shooting each other, but they're not exactly helping us out. We're sort of, you know, competing sort of against them, or we're trying to do, we have one set of goals, they have another. But just, I would absolutely love some kind of interaction that doesn't just involve shooting. Roy.
I've heard bits and pieces of this story, and I really liked this video, especially the bit where he's like, we're standing on the precipice, and then in another section, he's like, we have to see what the players do with this to see how it turns out. And my question really is around how much player agency is there in how this unfolds? It seems like in the recent, since Galnet and CGs have come back, they're really leaning into that. And it feels like there was this dark ages between 2017 and, say, a year and a half ago. And part of me is like, well, maybe they had other things they were working on. Maybe there was some change in focus at FDev about how much energy they were putting into Elite Dangerous. Or is it that, you know, for a period of time, we weren't playing the game right and we hadn't unlocked some stuff that was supposed to carry it forward? I'm not sure what to think about all that.
Well, to be clear, when you say there was a gap between, you know, 2017 and a year and a half ago, it wasn't a year and a half ago. It was literally last October 10th. It was like 6 months ago that they turned back on the story. And to be clear, you know, when you say how much of that was we weren't playing the story right, nothing changed between October 9th and October 10th other than Frontier turned it back on. I think when we talk about our interactions with the Thargoids and saying like, well, you know, we obviously have very limited interactions with the Guardians in that they're a dead race. Now, I strongly believe that we find in the future that they're not as dead as we propose, in that their AI continues on. But we've had no sort of opportunity to interact with that. And I don't think that that's a situation of, oh, we have to find the system that it's in. I think that's more of a situation of Frontier has to turn that on in a future content drop. But until they do, there's nothing really on that side we can do other than study the ruins. And we've gone through the entire series of Ramtom missions and discovered everything there is to discover on that. I believe that there will be a continuation coming soon with more information on that. And part of this alpha, like, Stage 4 was supposed to open up to the whole galaxy, and it didn't. It's still staying in the 50 light year bubble. And I believe that the reason for that is that they are coding like hell and working on putting, not necessarily like, okay, this is it, we're going full on, but the next iterative step in this process. I think there's going to be some new stuff in Thargoid and or Guardian sites that might not be turned on. One or two little things might be, I think, are going to be turned on right at Odyssey launch. I think it's going to be just like a teaser, a amuse bouche. And now you're going to have to wait 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever. At some point during the Odyssey spectrum, if you will, there will be more content story-wise that will be coming to further that story. I think based on Art's appearance on the Grinning Crows stream and some things, some little teaser hints or whatever, I think some continuation is coming very soon. But I think it's going to be more of a teaser, and now you wait a while. With regard to the Thargoids, I kind of have an issue with that because it's been stated over and over that it's like, it was stated at the beginning, well, what happens with the Thargoids, that's going to be up to you and how you interact with them. And I gotta say, I kind of a little bit call foul on that. I don't think that that's really true because they never gave us an opportunity to interact with the Thargoids other than shooting them. There was never a communication attempt. There was never oh, you have this new module in your ship now that is a decoder module, and you can try to, see what they're saying. It was always, you have 3 options with Thargoids. Number 1, you can show up and feed them occupied escape pods, in which case they will take them and leave. And so now you're a mass murderer of your own species, and they have done nothing other than take your stuff and go. 2, you ignore them completely. 3, you shoot them. We never had an option 4 that was like, make peaceful something. Other than, I guess, theoretically, be their friends and murder your friends and hand over your own species in some kind of weird V, the final battle. Remember those guys in V that were like, they were wearing the alien suits and they were like, I'm part of the Hitler Youth. And it's like, oh, okay, dude. So yeah, I kind of like, I want the story to progress, but we haven't had the option yet. I think there's some tantalizing stuff in the future, but I would very much love interactions with an alien species where we didn't shoot, and we've never had that. So I would love a couple new alien species. Tweaked, you had a thing.
Yeah, the first thing I take from that video was David Braben himself, the look in his eye, the joy, the love he has for the story he is telling. And to me, that is what has made Elite Dangerous so great as it is today. Now, like you said, that was 4 years ago, 2017.
Correct.
And let me, I agree with you, Kai. It would be great if we had another alien species in here, friendly or not friendly even. But even if it's just the Thargoids, I've flown from one end of this galaxy to the other. I've gone bug hunting. I've never been hyperdicted. I've never been hyperdicted in this game. And to me, if the Thargoids are going to be a threat, if they want to advance this story, they got to make them more dangerous. They got to make them pop up in random spots and just start pulling people. Make them scary. Make them the monster that they're supposed to be. Because right now, I don't care about them. If I don't fly out to where they are, I don't ever have to think about them. And the fact that it's been that way for 4 years for the most part, I think it's time to start ramping that up. And quite honestly, I know we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the new CG collecting Guardian stuff makes me wonder if we're not seeing the start of that right now.
Orange Phoenix.
Yeah, I remember when that video dropped. I wasn't too long into the game. Now I was a 1984 player, so I had deep set roots in Elite Dangerous lore and all that. But I remember when that dropped, and Thargoids, Guardians, yeah, that sort of rush of here comes God knows what, and we're getting the chance to sort of shape the story. The way he talks about the enthusiasm, as you were saying there, Tweet, it really hit the community, and then it fizzled out. It did fizzle out. Personally, I think that's business. It was Frontier having to delve in different directions to make their business grow to reach this dream. Personally, that's how I believe. They realized they did not have the financial backing or structure to get Braben's dream to become a reality. And we ended up with this lull. Just quickly, Tweaked, you were talking about not being hyper-addicted. That's because you've not been carrying the right things. I can guarantee you will get hyper-addicted if you carry the right things.
In the right places.
In the right places, exactly.
I agree with that, but if the Thargoids are going to be the big baddies, then they should be hyperdicting people left and right, whether we have anything in our cargo holds or not.
Exactly. If you're in the wrong place, full stop, they should be getting you. I agree wholeheartedly. But yeah, the way that affected the community, and then to have this sudden lull, was almost fatal to the game. And personally, the team that they've got aboard now, the listening they are to the community, the hints here, the hints there, it's all building to something. And I think, you mentioned Crow's stream with Arthur. There was a good few things hinted in there. There's stuff coming, and I'm excited personally.
Right on. So I noticed nobody picked up I've said it a couple of times and sort of nobody ever picks it up. Am I the only one that would really, really love a sort of Minbari or a Narn race where it's like, oh man, we come across an alien group that's been really put upon by Thargoids or whatever, and they need our help. We come across a Ferengi or a what do you call those, Centauri race, where it's like, okay, these guys are friendly to the extent that we're not fighting them, but like they have their own agenda and they're trying to screw us over. Like, I would love to interact with aliens and not just shoot them. Roy.
Yeah, I agree.
Roy.
Lots of areas on the map that are permit locked, and not just individual systems, like giant spheres of space. And there's certainly plenty of space in the galaxy that they've mapped here, that they could have a race of beings that suddenly become active and suddenly interact with us. They'd have maybe some retconning or some hand waving to do to explain how and why that happened. When, like, if you look at the heat maps of where people have traveled in the galaxy, it's almost like, in movies when there's an invisible creature and someone throws dust on it and it outlines the whole creature. It's like that with some of these spaces in the galaxy where something is in there, and for some reason we're being kept out. So there's certainly the mechanism to do it.
So I would point out, in response to your statement, Roy, that, and maybe we'll play that next week. There is a clip where David Braben says, we segmented out entire segments of the galaxy, sections, where we said, we don't even know what we're going to put here yet, but we have this, we're holding off for future story. This is a future thing. This will be a thing that we will use to make something cool in the future. Now, to date, and this game is over 8 years old, if you go back, especially, even older than that, if you go back to Kickstarter, beta, gamma, yada, yada, yada. But we're almost a decade in, and none of those segments have sort of been used yet. Like, let's maybe get started with that. Let's do something. Let's add in a new area and a new alien race and a new section of story in some way, somehow, something. Either something coming out and we interact with it, or something for us to go in and interact with, but something. Orange.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I played the original 1984 version, and anybody that has even looked at that knows there was lots and lots of other alien races.
Mm-hmm.
I know Commander Razab is on a hunt about Raxlans. They were lizard people.
Mm-hmm.
And you had the cat people I remember my father, me 5 years old, sitting on his lap watching him playing Elite Dangerous on a ZX Spectrum, telling me about these cat people, and me doughy-eyed like, wow. That I would love in the game. And yes, we have locked areas. My concern, that was probably the intention, but the game's gone on too long and they don't have the scope for it anymore. Yes, they could drop another race in, as you say, something like Minbari, or something that isn't going to affect the main gameplay in a major form. But I don't think so personally.
I would love to encounter a race like the Minbari, where they're so far advanced beyond us, they could squish us like a bug, but they're peaceful. They're like, well, no, we're not going to do that. And no, we're not going to share our weapons with you because we don't want you to hurt yourselves. I would love to meet some like I said, Ferengi or Centauri, where they're filling us with bullshit and we have to try to find a way through it to get to the truth. I would love to find some Narn that need help, that we have to show humanitarian aspect to. Tweaked.
Yeah, that kind of stuff could bring a multitude of new mission types. It could bring a variety of different looking NPCs in the stations. It could add a lot of immersion and depth and fun to the game if they would add some of those races back into Elite Dangerous that, as you said, Orange Phoenix, that they had in the original 1984 version of Elite.